At the same time, we'll work with our NATO allies to seek bold reductions in U.S. and Russian tactical weapons in Europe. And we can forge a new international framework for peaceful nuclear power, reject the nuclear weaponization that North Korea and Iran may be seeking. America will host a summit in 2016 to continue our efforts to secure nuclear materials around the world, and we will work to build support in the United States to ratify the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and call on all nations to begin negotiations on a treaty that ends the production of fissile materials for nuclear weapons. These are steps we can take to create a world of peace with justice.
All right, that's the president in Berlin yesterday. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Joining us right now is the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy, Frank Gaffney. Hey, Frank, my friend, good to talk to you, sir.
It's great to be with you, Steve. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Peace through justice. That's a combination. I guess that's Marx and Lenin, but also a little Al Sharpton thrown in there, kind of?
Yeah, I think probably Alinsky is in the mix as well, but it's definitely a throwback to, utopian leftists of yesteryear. And I guess it's really it's so instructive, Steve, that when the president goes outside the country to announce that he is going to eviscerate our nuclear deterrent, that he finds foreign venues to do that rather than to talk directly to the American people about it, and that he dresses it up in this radical, totally unrealistic utopianism. In this case, think about it. There isn't another nuclear power on the planet, and for that matter, as far as I know, none of the powers that aspire to be nuclear weapon states, that is following his lead in ridding the world of nuclear weapons, starting with ours. And I just have to tell you, I think the reason that we're hearing this kind of being thrown back at us from overseas is because the American people, I trust, believe, pray, have enough common sense to realize this is nuts. This is lunatic fringe leftist stuff, and it's likely to make the world a much more dangerous place rather than less.
Absolutely, and you're so right. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, just to name a few. Nobody shows any signs of doing what the president says we're going to do. And let's talk about what the president says we are going to do. Unilaterally decrease our nuclear arsenal by about a third. Talk to me about, before we talk about what that means, talk to me about the constitutionality, how this works. He could reduce our nuclear arsenal. How far could he reduce it? And he could do this all without any congressional authority?
It's a little unclear, Steve. It's a little unclear even that he is going to do it unilaterally. The next sentence after mentioning that he could safely remove a third of our strategic nuclear forces, talked about how he wanted to get some sort of understanding with the Russians to this effect. My guess is that exercising his responsibilities as commander-in-chief, taken to its logical, or I should say illogical extreme, he could disarm the United States entirely. And who knows, in this area at least, he may have that in mind. He says he wants to rid the world of all nuclear weapons. My guess is that what we're going to see, unless Congress, passes laws that he then has to sign, or they then have to override if he refuses to sign, which is a high bar, that absent that kind of statutory prohibition on this sort of disarmament, unilateral or otherwise, you're going to see the president doing a couple of things. One is making cuts, getting rid altogether of some weapons that are held in reserve in the stockpile, reducing the readiness of weapons that are still formally on alert, still supposedly the backbone of the continuing nuclear deterrent, and continuing something that, Steve, is in many ways the single most worrying piece of this to me of all. And that is that this president, and in fairness, his predecessors to some extent as well, other than my boss, Ronald Reagan, who gave us the nuclear deterrent that we have today, and we've been living off of basically ever since he left office. But basically, most of them, and most especially this president, have allowed our nuclear deterrent to atrophy, to become obsolescent, and to be, if it's maintained at all, it's kind of maintained on the cheap and with a lot of uncertainty. You know, one of the other things that you mentioned is he's interested in having this comprehensive test ban treaty approved by the Senate. Well, it was rejected back during the Clinton years,
Right.
because at the time, senators said, no, we need to make sure that our deterrent is viable, that it is safe and reliable, and testing needs to be an option for doing that. Well, we haven't tested any weapon in our stockpile since 1992. So there's a lot of uncertainty about how
Reliable anything
effective
would be.
it is,
Yeah,
reliable and safe. Yeah, it could be better all across the board, but it's not under this administration, that's for sure.
So do you expect, we only have about a minute, Frank, do you expect there to be Republican pushback? I haven't heard boo, really, since yesterday.
Well, there has been some out of some members of Congress. Congressman Mike Turner, I know, and I believe Congressman Buck McKeon and the chairman of the Armed Services Committee in the House, Congressman Doug Lamborn, another member of the Armed Services Committee. I heard Ted Cruz last night talking about this at an event very, very critically. But, the Republicans have to find their voice as a loyal opposition on national security. There's more of them than just John McCain, who more often than not gets it wrong.
That's right.
And on this one in particular, we need to get it right.
Absolutely. Frank, thank